Okay, let's dive into this. Welcome to today's Explainer, where we're going to deconstruct the chilling psychology and actual survival tactics pulled directly from 4 real, deeply unsettling night shift encounters. If you've ever worked a late shift or, even just stopped for gas way past midnight, you already know the vibe. The atmosphere totally changes when the sun goes down. But what we're looking at today isn't just about creepy vibes. We are literally going to break down the deliberate, highly calculated strategies that predators use to target isolated workers. And more importantly, we're going to look at the split-second survival instincts that kept these 4 people alive. We're going to map out their terrifying experiences into a distinct playbook.
There's this universal, unspoken truth about working late. The nights drag. The place feels too bright inside, too dark outside. Every customer feels a little stranger. Whether you're working the counter at an isolated gas station, closing down a local dive bar, or stocking shelves in the back of a massive 24-hour Walmart, the environment itself basically becomes a trap. You're brightly lit, sitting in a fishbowl, completely visible to the outside world while you're just looking out into pitch blackness. You're expected to be polite, to provide good customer service, and to stay right at your post. And as we'll see in the source material today, predators understand this dynamic perfectly. They use those exact workplace expectations against the workers.
All right, let's kick things off with Phase 1, testing the target.
Listen, predators rarely just strike out of nowhere. Instead, they test your boundaries. They manipulate everyday, benign workplace scenarios to gauge your reactions and really measure your gullibility. They want to see exactly how much you're going to tolerate before you finally put your guard up. Take our first source, a 21-year-old closing a gas station completely alone. We see this agonizing, slow 2-hour escalation of dread. 10 p.m. rolls around and he gets a phone call from someone using this low, drawn-out horror movie voice. At first, the worker just figures it's his friends playing a prank. But notice how it escalates. By 11 p.m., the calls speed up and the caller starts detailing exactly what's happening inside the silent store, proving he's out there watching. Then by 11:40 p.m., the psychological pressure turns physical. A blank-faced man walks in, buys a single bag of chips, and just stares unblinkingly at the worker. The predator used those isolating phone calls to measure the worker's reactions well before ever physically stepping onto the scene.
But the real turning point in that story? It happened during the second phone call. The worker, still kind of thinking it was a joke, sarcastically brushed the caller off, and the caller just let out this soft, weirdly genuine laugh and replied with this: "I shouldn't be rude to people who know where I am." Absolute chills, right? That is the exact moment the prank crossed into a targeted threat. The tone wasn't manic, it wasn't aggressive, it was dead calm. And that calculated calmness, that is a huge hallmark of someone who feels entirely in control of the situation.
Now, what's really interesting here is how this behavior transitions into another classic testing tactic: manufacturing an emergency. Picture this. It's 2:30 a.m., middle of nowhere, and a man in a red hoodie suddenly appears at the gas station doors. He claims his car is broken down out by the highway and asks the worker to come outside with a flashlight to help him check under the hood. It plays so perfectly on human empathy and the whole expectation of customer service. But was the car actually broken down?
Let's actually break down the brilliant split-second analytical deductions this worker made in his head. When the worker immediately offered to call a tow truck, the man refused. Red flag number 1. Then, the man claimed his car was parked right by the highway entrance, but the worker had literally just been outside a minute prior for some fresh air, and there was no car. Red flag number 2. Finally, the worker casually glances at the security monitor behind the counter and sees a car that had silently rolled up. But the chilling reality? He saw a second, crouching figure hiding near the back bumper on the screen. This wasn't a broken-down driver in need of a jump. It was a trap.
And that brings us right to Phase 2, the false ally.
Sometimes the most dangerous threats escalate the deception by completely disguising themselves as helpful, friendly saviors. They use social norms and disarming kindness to completely bypass your natural alarm systems. Take this extremely unsettling quote. It comes from a bartender named Cadence, working at a quiet dive bar. This well-dressed, trendy woman in her mid-30s comes in, acting like they were already best friends. She starts with intense flattery, "You're so pretty," and has this overly joyful body language. Then she quickly pivots to this bizarre, secretive job offer, working exclusive private parties for 10 grand a weekend. She actually tried to lure Cadence outside right then and there to meet someone who could explain it better. Predators use money, extreme flattery, and a disarming, trendy disguise to build a false sense of security and isolate their target.
We actually see this exact same playbook in our Walmart store story. It's 2 a.m., and a worker realizes a man is silently stalking her through the empty electronics aisles. She is absolutely terrified. Suddenly, a woman runs up, grabs her arm, acts like an old friend, and loudly whispers that the creepy guy is recording her. She urges the worker to follow her to safety. The worker, just flooded with relief, follows her. But look at this devastating contrast. The perpetrators manufactured a highly visible fake threat, the silent stalker, just to push the terrified victim right into the arms of the actual threat, the helpful woman steering her away.
So the worker lets this woman pull her through the massive, empty store. But as they completely bypass the safety of the busy front registers and head straight toward a dimly lit, unmonitored warehouse shipping exit, the worker realized something was horribly wrong. She ripped her arm away and literally ran for her life, while the woman screamed her name. Which leaves us with this terrifying question. Who was this helpful stranger actually working for?
Well, when security reviewed the tapes later, the truth finally came out. The stalker and the savior, they had walked through the front doors of the Walmart together. They were a coordinated team. The man's job was simply to induce panic, and the woman's job was to weaponize that panic to guide the victim out a back door where there were 0 cameras. And honestly, the most chilling detail? The woman knew the worker's name, even though the worker had definitely never introduced herself. This wasn't some random crime of opportunity. It was a specifically researched and targeted operation.
And this brilliantly illustrates our next section, Phase 3, the coordinated trap.
Because listen, these are not random, impulsive acts. As our sources clearly show, these predators employ highly calculated, multi-person strategies with very specific roles. If we map out the exact steps seen in both the Walmart incident and the dive bar incident, a terrifyingly practiced routine emerges. Step 1, identify an isolated worker, preferably someone stationed far away from coworkers or managers. Step 2, send in a disarming, friendly face to breach their personal space, whether it's an offer for a high-paying party or a rescue from a stalker. Step 3, lure that target to an unmonitored location. It's just a precise, methodical system.
The dive bar story is literally the most extreme example of this coordination. Let's look at their 4-part attack. First, they sent in a scout. This sophisticated, clean-cut older man who chatted with the bartender, assessed how vulnerable she was, and left a massive $100 tip just to establish trust. A week later, he returns with the friendly recruiter who made that 10 grand job offer. When that trick failed, they came back days later for a physical extraction. The woman entered the front to distract the bartender. Then, suddenly, masked men started aggressively rattling the metal back door to flush her out toward the front, where an unregistered black van was idling in the dark, waiting to grab her. It was basically a military-style ambush.
Which brings us to, honestly, the most empowering part of this explainer. Phase 4, trusting your instincts.
Because what kept all 4 of these workers alive wasn't pepper spray or a weapon, it was their ability to recognize when their baseline environment shifted and their absolute willingness to act on it immediately. The gas station worker who was stalked by the blank-faced man made this really crucial point. He watched the guy disappear into a blind spot behind the building. When the worker finally made a run for his car at midnight, he heard speed-walking footsteps slapping the pavement. The man was rushing him from the darkness. The worker barely locked his car doors in time. He later said, "My body already knew something was wrong before my brain wanted to admit it." That heavy feeling in your stomach? That is a biological alarm system detecting micro-expressions and spatial anomalies that your conscious mind just hasn't processed yet.
And you absolutely have to trust that alarm system because, well, predators don't react to boundaries like normal people do. Remember the worker who saw the crouching figure on his monitor? Under the guise of just grabbing his phone, the worker stepped out of sight and smashed the silent panic button, triggering this massive, screeching alarm throughout the entire store. Now, a normal person asking for a jump start would be startled, right? They'd be confused or maybe fearful of the police showing up. But this predator? His fake nervousness totally vanished. He relaxed his posture entirely, gave this slow, knowing, amused smile, and then just fluidly bolted into the woods.
And thank goodness that worker hit the alarm when he did, because when police investigated the abandoned car left behind by the 2 men who ran off, they discovered it had been stolen a week earlier. But far more terrifying, they found the front passenger door was left wide open, meaning a third person had been waiting in the dark the entire time, right outside the gas station doors. If that worker had walked outside with a flashlight like the guy asked, he would have been walking straight into a 3-on-1 ambush.
So, what's our main takeaway here? How did they survive? They used highly effective, actionable tactics. The Walmart worker completely broke social politeness. She stopped caring if she offended the helpful woman and physically ripped her arm away. The gas station worker created physical barriers, locking the doors early even though it broke store policy. The dive bar worker, when she was followed by a mysterious car, didn't drive home, she sought an immediate safe haven and navigated straight to a brightly lit police station. And others utilized their emergency tools the second things felt off, slamming the panic button without waiting for permission. Breaking politeness is literally the single most important key to breaking a predator's trap.
We've covered a lot today. We've looked at the manipulation, the lures, the highly coordinated teams, and the incredible survival instincts of these workers. Every single one of them faced a moment where they had to choose between being polite and being safe. So I leave you with this final thought to ponder tonight. What would have happened if they had just ignored that heavy feeling in their stomach? What would have happened if they hadn't trusted their gut? It's a really stark reminder of the razor-thin line between clocking out of a quiet night shift and becoming a true crime statistic. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer. Stay safe out there, and seriously, always trust your instincts.